Times when the class clown went too far? This is my channel's first video, so if you have any suggestions, let me know in the comments below. Anyway, let's get into the first story. Alright, so this story takes place back in my sophomore year of high school. We had this kid in our class, let's call him Jake. Now, Jake was the kind of guy who lived for the spotlight. He was the class clown through and through, always pulling some wild stunt or cracking jokes to get a rise out of everyone. Most of the time, his pranks were goofy but harmless, and even the teachers would laugh it off, until that one day. So, we're in chemistry class with Mr. Patterson, who was one of the more laid-back teachers in the school. He was the type who didn't mind some jokes here and there, as long as you weren't disrespectful. Jake, of course, loved to push boundaries with Mr. Patterson, because he knew he could get away with more than he could in other classes. This one day, Jake came in, acting a little more hyped than usual. Before class started, he was talking about how he had something epic planned. None of us knew what it was, but with Jake, you always knew it could get a little wild. So, class begins, and Mr. Patterson is explaining the lab we're about to do. It was something with Bunsen burners and boiling water. Nothing too intense, but enough to keep us busy for the period. As we're all getting our materials, Jake sneaks over to the front of the classroom near Mr. Patterson's desk. He pulls something out of his backpack that, at first glance, looks like just a regular balloon. But then we notice it's not just any balloon. It's one of those huge, oversized balloons, the kind that can stretch to be the size of a yoga ball with enough water. And Jake, he starts filling it with water at the sink by the teacher's desk. We're talking many gallons of water going into this thing. At this point, some people are whispering, but Mr. Patterson hasn't noticed because he's busy helping a couple of students with their lab setup. Jake's grinning like a madman as this balloon gets bigger and bigger. And here's the kicker. After he fills it to an absurd size, he carefully ties it off and then hides behind Mr. Patterson's desk. We're all watching, half in awe, half terrified of what's going to happen next. A few minutes later, Mr. Patterson walks back to his desk to grab something, and that's when Jake makes his move. He pulled out a safety pin from his pocket and, in one swift motion, lunges forward and pops the balloon. What happened next was pure chaos. The balloon exploded with so much force that water went everywhere. It drenched Mr. Patterson nearly from head to toe, soaked his desk, flooded the floor, and even hit a few of the nearby students. It was like someone had dumped a small pool in the middle of the classroom. The sound of the balloon popping and the rushing water was so loud that everyone in the class jumped, and for a second, there was just this stunned silence. Then, Mr. Patterson slowly turns around, absolutely dripping wet, and just stares at Jake. You could see the steam coming out of his ears. Jake, meanwhile, is standing there trying to hold back laughter, but you could tell even he realized he'd messed up big time. Mr. Patterson didn't yell. He didn't lose his cool. He just calmly told Jake to go to the principal's office, and that's when it hit Jake, and the rest of us. This wasn't funny anymore. It was serious. Jake tried to crack a joke as he left, but no one was laughing. And the aftermath? Well, Jockey ended up getting suspended for a week, and his parents had to pay for all the cleaning and damage caused by the water. Mr. Patterson's personal laptop, which had been sitting on the desk, got completely ruined. After that, the school put in some pretty strict rules about classroom behavior, especially around lab equipment. Jake wasn't the same after that. His reputation as the class clown took a nosedive because people realized that he didn't know when to stop. Before, his pranks were harmless fun, but this was different. It was reckless, and people got hurt. Not physically, but Mr. Patterson lost a lot of personal work and data because of that stunt and stuff like that. Looking back, it's one of those moments that marked the end of an era. Jake still tried to joke around after that, but the vibe was never the same. Our next story is about someone a little more sinister. There was this kid in our school named Tommy. He was the class clown, but not in a fun way. His jokes weren't just annoying, they were mean. He thrived off making others the punchline, especially the teachers. It wasn't uncommon to hear him mock the way someone dressed, talked, or even taught. Most of the time, teachers just ignored him, hoping he'd grow out of it, but one day he crossed the line. Ms. Harris was our English teacher. She was new to the school, fresh out of college, and really trying to connect with us. She was kind and enthusiastic, though a bit nervous at times, and that made her an easy target for Tommy. He had been teasing her for weeks, making snide remarks about her shaky voice and awkward habits during class. Most of the students just cringed or laughed nervously because no one wanted to get on Tommy's bad side. Then one day, Tommy decided to up the ante. During a lesson on poetry, he interrupted her mid-sentence with a sarcastic, "Oh, nice stutter, Ms. Harris. Maybe you can rhyme your way out of that." The class fell into an uncomfortable silence. Ms. Harris paused, clearly trying to keep it together, but you could see her face turning red. Instead of letting it go, Tommy doubled down. He started mocking the way she pronounced words, exaggerating her mistakes, and laughing loudly. A few kids chuckled nervously, but most of us just stared in shock. You could see Ms. Harris's eyes welling up, but she tried to push through it, continuing the lesson as if nothing had happened. But then, Tommy went further. He started making fun of the way she dressed, calling her frumpy and out of touch. That was it. Ms. Harris put down her book, turned away from the class, and quietly said, "Excuse me," before walking out of the room. The door closed softly behind her, but the silence that followed was deafening. A few moments later, we heard her crying in the hallway. The room was dead quiet after that. Even Tommy looked uncomfortable, though he tried to shrug it off like it was no big deal. But we all knew it was. A few of the kids, including me, felt awful. She didn't come back for the rest of the class, and another teacher had to step in. That afternoon, word spread that Ms. Harris had gone home early. The next day, Ms. Harris came back to class, but she wasn't the same. She didn't smile as much, didn't engage with us like before. Tommy sat in the back, noticeably quieter, but it was too late. The damage was done. Why do people have to mess with the young teachers? They are already in major college debt, and most of the time it seems like they are the only ones who are actually passionate about teaching. Anyway, our next story is somehow worse. This story still haunts me every time I think about it. It happened back in my junior year of high school. We had this kid named Luke, one of those guys who always loved messing with people, constantly pulling pranks and getting laughs at other people's expense. He had this reputation for being the class clown, but most of his pranks were on the harmless side. Nothing too extreme. But then one day, things took a dark turn, and he crossed a line that no one saw coming. Luke's best friend, Mark, was a pretty chill guy, but there was one thing everyone knew about him. He was terrified of snakes. And I'm not talking about just a little scared. I mean, Mark had a full-blown phobia. He couldn't even look at a picture of a snake without freaking out. Everyone in our friend group knew about it, including Luke. Up until this one day, Luke had never targeted Mark's fear in any of his pranks. But for some reason, that all changed. One weekend, Luke went to this reptile expo with his dad, who was really into exotic pets. Luke found himself face to face with this massive 4-foot-long boa constrictor. Now, this wasn't some harmless garden snake. This thing was thick, muscular, and had this sinister, menacing look about it. Its scales were dark green and brown, and its head was flat and triangular, with these cold, glassy eyes that just screamed danger. Luke, being the prankster that he was, had an idea that he thought would be hilarious. He decided to buy the snake from the expo owner, who was a friend of his dad's, and use it for the ultimate prank on Mark. Monday rolls around, and Luke sneaks into school early with this huge snake in a cloth bag, keeping it hidden in his backpack. His plan? To put the snake in Mark's locker right before first period. Luke knew Mark's routine like the back of his hand. Mark always went to his locker to grab his books before heading to class, so Luke figured this would be the perfect opportunity. While Mark was still in homeroom, Luke carefully took the snake out of the bag. The thing was huge. It looked like its body was nearly as thick as a soda can, and it was easily longer than most of our arms. Luke gently placed the snake inside Mark's locker, curling it up on top of Mark's books. The snake, calm but eerie, slithered a bit before settling in, blending in with the shadows of the locker. Luke quickly closed the locker door and went to class, grinning like he had just pulled off the prank of the century. A few of us knew something was up because Luke couldn't stop smirking, but we had no idea what he had actually done. Then came the moment of truth. Mark walks up to his locker like any other day, completely unaware. He spins the combination, pulls open the door, and that's when everything went sideways. As soon as the door swings open, the snake moves, slowly lifting its head and flicking its tongue. Its beady eyes locked onto Mark, and it started to uncoil itself, its long, muscular body shifting across the books. Mark's face turned white as a sheet. He didn't even have time to scream. He just froze in absolute terror. Then, as the snake started moving more, slithering halfway out of the locker, Mark stumbled backward, gasping for air. His body went into full panic mode. He tried to back away, but his legs gave out, and he hit the floor hard. It was like watching someone experience their worst nightmare in real life. Mark's breathing got faster and faster, until it became this rapid, shallow wheezing. His hands were shaking uncontrollably, and his face went from pale to a frightening shade of blue. That's when everyone around him realized that this was way more than just panic. Mark was in serious trouble. Someone screamed for help, and within minutes, a teacher came running, followed by the school nurse. Mark was completely unresponsive by the time the nurse got to him. His body had gone into shock from the sheer terror of seeing the snake up close. The ambulance was called, and Mark was rushed to the hospital. His body couldn't handle the fear, and he went into something that was almost like a seizure. His muscles had locked up, and he couldn't breathe properly. It was so bad that he had to stay in the hospital for a few days while the doctors monitored him. As for Luke, well, the fallout was intense. The school didn't mess around with this one. Luke got suspended for a month for endangering Mark's life, and there were a lot of talks about pressing charges, though I don't think anything legal ever came of it. The whole situation became a huge deal around school, and Luke lost most of his friends over it. Nobody could believe that he'd gone so far. What started out as a prank turned into a legitimate medical emergency. Mark, on the other hand, was never the same. When he eventually came back to school, he was quieter, more withdrawn, and he avoided Luke like the plague. They had been best friends for years, but after what happened, it was like that friendship just dissolved overnight. Mark couldn't trust him anymore, and honestly, no one really blamed him for it. To this day, people still talk about it. It became one of those legendary stories that everyone knows, but no one jokes about. Yeah, I can see why nobody would joke about that. Hopefully Mark found some better friends after that. Anyway, here's the next one. I think this one is my favorite because of the interesting perspective that we don't normally see in these Reddit threads. I used to be the class clown. My laughter was contagious, my jokes always on point. I loved making people smile, lifting their spirits, even if it was just for a moment. But behind the laughter, there was a deep sadness. I was trying to mask the pain of a lonely childhood, of feeling like I didn't belong. I went to a small high school, grad class of 59. Everyone knew everyone, even if you weren't friends. There was this one kid. He was quiet, shy, and seemed to keep to himself. Me, being the immature idiot class clown, decided regularly to make a few jokes at his expense, school shooter and the likes. But he just looked away, uncomfortable. A few weeks later, I heard the news. The new kid had taken his own life. The whole school was in shock. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. Had I done something wrong? Could I have prevented this? In the years that followed, I struggled with the weight of that guilt. I still do today. I realized that my laughter had been a shield, protecting me from the pain of the world while hurting others. I know that the pain I caused can never be undone. Wow, never mind about that one being my favorite. It was actually really heavy. Anyway, that's all I have time for today. Like the video if you liked it, dislike the video if you didn't. If you have any suggestions, write me a comment. I promise to read them all. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.